My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be talking about the top 7 things that really grinds my gears about Alaska. This can be about Alaska or related to Alaska, but either way, we're going to be jumping into those. This video might take on a little bit more of a negative tone of view, so yeah, you might have to watch some of this and come back later. I don't want to be really polluting anyone's outlook for the entire day just as a result of this video. So proceed with caution. Before we get started, do make sure you give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's go and jump into today's video. Okay, I'm going to be giving these things in no particular order, but the first thing that really grinds my gears about Alaska is just really the long history of just neglect, and I'm just going to say outright abuse by the federal government towards Alaska and its development. Really, the Philippines received more intentional development and resources and actually exploiting the resources and actually creating a thriving people and economy there than Alaska did throughout its history, which is just mind-boggling because the resources available here is just second to none in the entire United States, real estate portfolio, whatever you would call that. But the resources here is just off the chart. But the problem was that the federal government, back when it was founded, from day one, Alaska was kind of on shaky ground because it was purchased by Secretary of State Seward, and it was with President Jackson, if I recall correctly. And not a very popular president, so it became a very divisive issue from day one about Alaska. Nobody wanted to touch it because it just became such a divisive issue. They just kind of got handed down from administration to administration. And in the meantime, you just had all these people that were trying to move here, trying to do stuff, and the federal government was not going to step in and wasn't going to intentionally develop anything. And the people were here like, okay, well, we can do a lot of this stuff, but we need to be able to govern ourselves. And the abuse came in where the federal government refused to give them the ability to actually govern themselves. So even just becoming a territory became a knockdown, drag-out fight. Additionally, a lot of the development for the lower 48 with like the railroad, which was the thing that really drove the development for a lot of the western states. One of the big things that made that so economically viable is that the federal government gave this tax breaks to the railroad developers for all the land on either side of it. But they were not willing to give that to the developers up in Alaska for whatever reason, which made it so much more expensive to do any kind of development. Again, it kind of feels like a lot of people in D.C. were trying to put a pillow over the baby's face in the cradle is kind of what it felt like, honestly. And additionally, we had a lot of people coming up during the gold rush, and we lost a lot of those people. They would have stayed otherwise, but the reason they left was there was no surveying, there was no way of knowing what belonged to who, so they couldn't do homesteading. That never really was a very prominent thing up here, because to do that you have to have surveying, and the federal government refused to come up and do it, and they wouldn't allow anyone already here to do the surveying as well. So it's just a long history of just abuse and neglect is really what it turns into. I mean, it's abuse when you're not letting people govern themselves. It's neglect when you just pay no attention to it and let us do our own thing. So that's kind of a long history there. Doing better now, but kind of the upshot of it is that our governing class has not had as long of a time to grow and mature and develop as really any other state in the entire lower 48. Because you go to somewhere like Texas or any of these other states, they have kind of the big names that have developed over generation down there, and we really don't have that just yet. We have the Murkowskis, which that is what it is. But for the most part, you don't have a whole lot of political families up here that actually have some generational pull where a lot of skill has had to be developed over time. So that's something that we're still feeling to this day. Another thing that really grinds my gears about Alaska is kind of the attitude that some Alaskans have towards development. Now, a lot of Alaskans understand, hey, development needs to happen. If we're going to continue to have a future that looks bright, we have to develop. If we don't, we are going to shrink, and our ability to operate as a state is going to become just completely untenable. But some people really don't understand this. I've heard a famous quote from a famous historian whose name I am currently forgetting, but the quote is that all immigrants want to, walk through the door of whatever place it is that they're going and immediately shut the door behind them. And I really do see that play out up here, where you have a lot of people who get up here and they immediately want to make it impossible for other people to follow, and they also want to make sure it's challenging to develop. I mean, this really does become really front and center when you go to community council meetings and you have a lot of people who are complaining about, the high cost of housing and this is so unaffordable. But then when you try to propose any subdivisions to be built in certain areas, then everybody goes into an uproar because, oh no, we can't develop there. That's just going to bring in more people and blah, blah. It's like, you can't have it both ways, okay? You either have to accept cost of housing is going to become more and more and more and more unaffordable to the point where actually you are going to get pushed out, or you have to accept this development. You cannot have it both ways over a long term. For those that are going for more of the off-grid kind of a feel, best thing I can say, go as far out as you possibly can and just live at peace with the fact knowing that eventually civilization is going to catch up in some way. Now, another big issue for me is that I haven't really seen a whole lot of industries getting attracted up here besides oil, fish and game, and tourism. Now, these are good, and they've actually given us more diversity than what we've had in the past. But I really would like to see more diversity in what our industries are up here in our economies. We're obviously doing a better job too with kind of being a logistics hub just geographically with where we're located. But it just seems like we have so many other opportunities for things that we could be doing, but we're kind of held back by the powers that be. Okay, number 4 here. This is going to be a little less fatalistic, but yeah, the drivers here, I know everybody says that the drivers wherever they're at are crazy, but that's definitely true for Alaska too. I get the sense all too often that a lot of drivers just treat it like it's one big race, even though we're all not going to the same place. So having this mentality makes absolutely no sense. But I'm no joke. Every time you're on the road, you kind of have to just put yourself in the right lane and just let everyone go blazing past. And it just turns into Mad Max every morning going down the Glen if you allow yourself to get sucked into it. But let's go ahead and take a break real quick here. For those of you who've been watching for a bit, you do know that I have a relocation guide for those of you who are considering moving up here. To get your copy of that, feel free to reach out to my website down below. And when you're registering, just make sure you put relocation guide in the comment section so I know what to send you. Now, let's go and finish today's video. Now, this next thing is probably more prevalent to me than it is to most other people, but why does it take so dadgum long to actually close on a property up here when you're trying to buy a house once you get it under property? Most other parts of the U.S., you can have it closed within a month. And up here, usually it's about 45 days to 60 days, sometimes longer. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's a source of frustration, you can imagine, if you're working in real estate. Another thing that's definitely a big thing that's going to grind your gears once you do get up here is it is actually pretty expensive to fly to most other places in the state. Specifically, if you're trying to fly over to Juneau, our capital, from somewhere as close as Anchorage, I think the last time I went, it was like $400 or something like that for that little hour and a half trip that it took for me to get down there. So it can be a little expensive getting to places within the state itself. That's just something you have to budget for if you're planning to do a lot of traveling. Last but not least, well, you know what? Actually, yeah, this probably is the least. Why is the crab so expensive up here? The crab is literally closer to us than it is anywhere else. And yet it's still so dadgum expensive. I wish somebody could give me a good explanation for this, but I'm afraid we're probably just going to have to be reality, unfortunately. But thanks for listening through my tirade today. I hope it's been useful, hopefully a little entertaining for you. Put your comments down below if you have anything that really grinds your gears about Alaska or anything that you have questions about, and be happy to help as best I can. And we'll see you on the next one.